All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for being back here on Metafit Metamind Podcast. I so appreciate you for just continuing to listen and learn from my guest, my special guest, who I'm able to bring on. And I have I guess, the honor and you could say, first experience of like learning from these amazing guests. And one of these people are Tracie Root, who I'm so excited to have you here. Tracie, thank you so much.
My pleasure. I'm super excited too. When we first met, it's been a couple of months
Mm-hmm.
now. I just really was excited about the connection that we made in
Yeah.
right away. So excited to talk more today.
Yeah, and so with that being said, I like from the beginning, like you said, that connection was felt, and it's so much easier to have someone on the podcast to just kind of we just have a conversation, right? And
Yeah.
so first, I just want to learn a little bit, and for the audience here too, is who is Tracie?
Oh, who is Tracy? That feels like a loaded question. So I'll just go back from like the who is Tracy to kind of how I became who I am.
Hmm.
Um, so I, for anyone who, is new to me, I am a midlife woman. I'm 55 years old. I live in California and I grew up in Silicon Valley mostly. I had kids later in life, and that's a part of how I got here as well. So my kids now at 55 are just graduating high school and in high school. So I love speaking with parents because often I'm ahead of them in the age range, but in the same place or ahead of them with how old our kids are. And it's always fun to talk to other parents. My goals, like in my work life, have changed a lot over the years. When I grew up, I was a very ambitious, I still am ambitious, but I was a very kind of type A, um, you know, really go after the big life that the Silicon Valley lifestyle in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s kind of told us that we were supposed to want. So after I graduated from high school and went to college and graduated from college, I started working in Silicon Valley. I worked in corporate life for about 17 years. And while I was doing that, I met my first husband. He and I were together for 13 years before we even decided that we were going to start a family, get married. So we finally got married. And right after our first child was born,
Hmm.
my husband was diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those next 4 years or so were a lot of survival mode, a lot of figuring out what's important in your life
Hmm.
and managing his illness and, his getting better and the
Yeah.
recurrence and ultimately his passing. At the same time, I was having two kids, trying to work the corporate life
Yeah.
and do everything. I can't even imagine what else I could have been trying to do at the time,
Yeah.
combining those things.
Yeah.
So it's a very like looking back, it was a big time of trying to do everything well instead
Hmm.
of trying to do the things that you do well so that you're happy. um
Yeah.
yeah, so
That's
that was a
that's
big
so
one.
interesting that you said that. And that's I also think it's cool that, most people in society think, oh, like you get married, then you have your kids like pretty soon after. And the
Mhm.
fact that you got to enjoy each other for 13 years before the kids too. Like
Yeah,
what was that? Like I don't know, this is just something that just came up in my
like
head right now.
why?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
why? And what would
totally.
you say is like the funnest thing y'all did like in that time period too?
Oh, that's a really good question. I appreciate that. So I mean, I met him when I was probably, well, actually we met when I was 21. He was 25 or 6,
Hmm.
something like that.
Hmm.
And like I said, we were together for 13 years before we decided to get married. Why is that? Well, I was still in school, he was
Yeah.
working, and I wanted to start my career.
Yeah.
And in Silicon Valley, I think, especially in that time frame, again, like the 90s, 2000s, it was not an uncommon thing to really want to get your career under
Yeah.
you before you started your family.
Yeah.
And for us, we didn't really see a need to like get married. We were living together. We bought a house together all before we got married. So
Yeah.
really we got married because we wanted to start a family and felt like Like that was the good time to make things
Okay.
kind of official.
Yeah.
But we had been together, like I said, been together and living together and,
Mhm.
having our life together for a long time. But I knew that I wanted to wait to have kids because I was still working to grow my career. And as
Yeah.
the breadwinner of the two of us, right, he was
Mhm.
kind of the idea guy, super creative,
Sounds
kind
like
of
me.
all over the place. And I was like the doer and
Yeah.
the girl who, go to college, get the job, do the
Yep.
things, make the money,
Have the home.
have a home, right?
Yeah.
And, when you're a woman in corporate America, if you're not focused on those things, they easily get put aside to the other things. So I really, I came from a family of divorce. My mom was a single mom from when I was in fifth grade, well, until she passed actually, and when I was in my 20s. And, uh, and it was always like, you need to make sure that you have your own situation, because if we rely, it's very much like if you rely on other people, then you're gonna, things are gonna get messed up. So that's kind of my childhood trauma, if you put it that way, right? Like I needed to make sure that I had things going before I changed gears and relaxed. And he was fine with that, right? Because he was kind of doing his own creative thing and he was dreaming for us
Mhm.
and coming up with, wow, wouldn't it be cool to do this or live here or do that?
Yeah.
And I wasn't that person. I was not a dreamer. I was very much the doer.
The
And he was,
doer.
so
Yeah.
which was great because you kind of need both.
Mhm.
And so when he died, that was like my big realization of all of these details that I didn't really
Mhm.
beginning, that if he's the dreamer and I'm the doer and now he's gone, I need to
Yeah.
figure out how to dream
Yeah.
and how to imagine what's possible,
Mhm.
even though I'm still here in the day to day making things happen and paying the rent and all
Yeah.
of that stuff. So I really feel like that's kind of how my coaching mission, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
has developed, is to remind people that, you might be in the day to day making sure that you're making your income and doing your work and paying your bills and all of that. But if
Mhm.
you don't have a big dream for the future, like what's it all for?
Yeah.
And are you going to keep moving forward, or are you just going to be like, living the same year over and over again instead of
Yeah.
growing and developing?
And I think that's such an important thought and like conversation to have with your
Yeah.
partner or with yourself is like, yes, we have to have the house, we have to have our stability, and I'll put that like very flow depending on what have to have for you is.
Mhm.
But like between it reminds me of like me and my husband because he's very much the doer and I'm very much like a dreamer.
Yeah.
um and so more recently, unfortunately, the way it happened was that one of his Marine Corps buddies, brothers, um, who he served with, they
Hmm.
decided to not exist in this world anymore, right?
Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
so it's not the first time either. And
Hmm.
all of a sudden, one day I'm like, you know what? I think this is okay to ask him at this point. And I asked him, I said, hey, babe, like, this stuff has been happening. You've been doing all these things. This is what you've been experiencing because he took this one a little harder than, I don't want
Yeah.
to say harder, but just different.
Yeah.
And I was like, I said, with all this that's going on, like, how do you actually want to be remembered? Because we've had many conversations of him doing or as people, just generally, people do the you have tos, right? Or these are
Yeah.
the shoulds, and this is how people should live, and we need to have this. And then we've been talking about the vision, right? The
Hmm.
goal now, because now he's
Yeah. Great.
stepping into that, which I think is cool. And I think it's important to have that in a partnership. So, before I continue on that one, I do want to know like what was the funnest thing y'all did together.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things that I think must have been such an like a chapter turn for you, maybe. And I'm just guessing here of like having to step into also having the
Oh, yeah.
dreamer character as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so anyone who's gone through a major loss,
Mm-hmm.
knows that like there's a time period and it's different
Mm-hmm.
for everyone. But for
Mm-hmm.
me, he passed in the spring of 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me about a year and a half or so for me to kind of get to the point where I was like, all right, I need to figure out how to move forward. And I think, for me, it was really important to I'm gonna need to do something different now,
Mm-hmm.
because I've been kind of in this stuck survival mode place, and it was survival
Yeah.
mode while he was sick, and then he passed,
Yeah.
and then still kind of recovering from all of that. And I call it getting out of like the fog of grief, right? Like
Yeah.
everything, it's honestly, I don't remember a lot from that period of time,
Mm-hmm.
which is a bummer when you have little kids. Like there's a lot I don't remember because I was
Oh.
so like trapped in just surviving.
Yeah.
So thank God for digital photography and stuff,
Right.
because I
Yeah.
do have lots of pictures still, even though I don't really remember a whole lot of the details. Um, and finally got to the point where I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna need to do something different because this sucks and it's
Mm-hmm.
miserable and I'm exhausted
Mm-hmm.
all the time, and I need to do something new.
Mm-hmm.
And I also like don't want to not like, I didn't have support, right?
Yeah.
I didn't have family nearby. While he was sick, people would come and visit and they would stay and all of that. But after he died, that
Yeah.
chat, that's over, and
It kind of
your day to
fades,
day
it
just
seems like,
keeps
huh?
going, right?
Yeah.
So not that and no, through no fault of anybody's, that's just how it is. Like they don't
Mm-hmm.
live here, they have lives, we have lives, we all have lives.
Yeah.
So I finally got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm not sure how, but I want to be somewhere where I can be by my family,
Mm-hmm.
by his family,
Yeah.
all of that. And at the same time, I also like need to sleep better and take care of myself
For
better,
sure.
because I really wasn't doing any of that. And so I decided to start with what I saw in the mirror, which was I had two babies and was in survival mode for 4
Mm-hmm.
years, and I needed to get back to kind of myself physically.
Mm-hmm.
So I found a health coach,
Cool.
and it was through like a network marketing style
Okay.
company.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, well, this is totally new to me. I just need someone to tell me what to do because this is not working the way it is. And I
Yeah.
lost a ton of weight really quickly and felt really like happy and
Mm-hmm.
like I had myself again in a lot of ways. And so I started, so since it was a network marketing kind of thing, right? They taught me, they were a coach, they taught me, I became a coach, I started helping other people. And what was great about that was not so much the like tell me what to eat stuff, because I never really was excited about that part. I just needed it personally.
Yeah.
But what
I
I
feel
was
you.
excited, yeah. What I was excited about was the new world of personal development,
Yes.
reading, self-help books and all that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
and getting an understanding of really what you decide is what your future turns into, and
Yeah.
that you
Ooh, I
get
like
to
that.
create that, right?
Yeah. I like that
Um,
you said that you get to decide, like,
oh yeah,
it's your decision, which I think is
everything
really
that's
important to
like,
remember.
it's the idea that the choices we make create our future, like
Mhm.
period.
Yes.
There's nothing else, right?
Mhm.
The things that we experience affect the choices that we choose, and but we can still change that over time, right? It's part of the growth process. So I really got excited about being able to help other people change their thoughts around feeling stuck and doing things that they didn't really want to do, but they felt like they had to do, or the whole should factor, which I never really even use that word because it's ridiculous.
I don't like shooting people.
Right? Yeah. You get
Yeah.
to decide. And that was the beginning of me becoming a coach. And within 6 months, I
Uh-huh.
realized that, wow, as a coach, I was making enough money on the side to
Yeah.
leave my corporate job. And I moved to Florida, which is where my parents and my sister were, and where I was able to, from a cost of living standpoint,
Yeah.
live much
It's
in the same
amazing.
manner that we were in Silicon Valley in Florida,
Yeah.
just coaching.
That's
So I never got
amazing.
another job since then.
Yeah.
But
You are doing something right and all these changes. And I think it's really cool that it goes along with what the next question that I want to ask you is like that correlation, right? In your
yeah,
experience between mental and physical health,
yes.
and what your experience has been like with those two together. And even
Yeah,
sometimes I say the spiritual part too.
absolutely. I mean, I think it's all part of us. So you
Mm-hmm.
can't really separate any of those things from each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
Since I did start, and I started coaching 12 years ago. So like as a health coach for those first couple of years, but really moved into focusing more on the mindset and the life part of your life. And when you decide that you want something different, you can do physical things that will help you mentally and emotionally and spiritually to get closer to the things in those other categories too. It's so important to recognize the intertwining of all of that. For
Yeah.
me, the mind body mind connection really relates specifically. The first thing that always comes to my mind is sleep.
Oh, yeah.
From a physical care standpoint, if
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting enough sleep, I am not so exhausted that I can't make
Mm-hmm.
good decisions.
Yeah.
And when I was health coaching, that's always a big deal, because when you can't make good decisions, you eat junk,
Yeah.
um, or go back to old habits that you don't really want to maintain.
Or you have frustrations and all these things, like,
Yeah.
and I understand it now more as a mom, because as moms we don't really
Yes.
sleep right now
Yeah.
with
Exactly.
littles. And so it's so interesting, the emotions that come with that, and the experiences, and your
Yes.
physical body. And the a lot of moms, and I'm not a doctor, I'm a coach, but I'm not a doctor or anything, right? But
Yeah.
a lot of moms experience PPD, postpartum anxiety, like, oh, this, well, I think, and this is just my opinion, it's like, I think sleep is highly connected in that.
Yeah. And actually, I read a book.
Uh-huh.
Can't remember who it was. Oh, I'm gonna have to.
Maybe share with
Yeah,
me
it
later, and
was
then I'll
Ariana
include it.
Huffington. I
Uh-huh.
remember is the author. She
Uh-huh.
started the Huffington Post. I can't remember the name of the book, but it was all about the value of self-care in like the rest of your life,
Mhm.
and the value of sleep specifically in the rest of your life,
Oh,
and
yeah.
how that, if you're really messing up your mind, if you're not giving it the time to recover every single day. And it's not just, now and then, it's the every single day factor
Is it the
that,
sleep revolution?
I think that was the second one. I think there was
Okay.
one before that. That was the one that I read.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Well, whenever you remember it, send it
yeah,
to
yeah,
me
yeah. I
so I
might
can
still have a
share it.
copy of it too, so I'll get it
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah,
Um,
but I didn't even know this book existed, so now I have another recommendation.
yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and it's, you already know that this
Mhm.
is true,
Yes.
especially as a mom of someone who's so tiny,
Mhm.
that your life is not your own.
Mhm.
And it's okay that it's not your own, but it's
Yeah.
still exhausting and it still
Mhm.
affects you.
Yeah.
And as your kid gets older, or whatever, like in my experience, as my kids got older, and I spent a lot of that time as an only parent,
Mhm.
not just on the weekends when someone was traveling,
I know.
but literally the
Yeah.
only one. And
Powerful.
it was a lot. And to get
Yeah.
through all of that to where I did finally have some support when I moved to live
Mhm.
closer to my family, and then to move back here to California when I got engaged and remarried,
Mhm.
like the value of having support in your life so that you can take care of yourself
Yeah.
is 100% valuable, that
Mhm.
people forget because they're
Yes.
so, again, busy doing the day to day, making sure you pay the rent, making sure that
Yeah.
everyone has something to eat,
Making
that if
sure
you're not,
they're surviving.
yeah, that they're all living. What about you, right?
Yeah.
Everyone needs. So we need to make sure that that self-care piece, and
Mhm.
whatever that looks like specifically for you, it might be sleep, but it might
Mhm.
be meditation, it
Yeah.
might be taking time to read a book,
Yes.
right? It might be, getting to go out with your friends and remember that you are an adult woman, not
Yeah.
just a mom.
Yeah.
And those are such valuable reminders that it doesn't reduce the importance of what we're doing as parents,
Mhm.
but we can't forget the rest of it, or
Yeah.
we will literally fall apart.
Yeah. And that's so, like, that's like right there, cherry on top of like what you just said. And it's one thing I think about too, is that there's a saying that's like, oh, as a mom you lose yourself, but I don't truly believe that anymore. I've actually, it's been like an interesting learning for me, as like, we're still an adult, we're still this person, this human
Yeah,
being. I think at that point it just turns into like,
it's
we're
an
the
evolution.
mom, of course, but it's like with an addition to
Yeah,
us, right?
it's totally like a Pokemon evolution to the
Yeah.
next level,
We gotta
right?
evolve.
Right. We evolved. We have
Yeah.
more skills. We have more power. We have
Hmm.
more, I
We
totally am
take
not a
more
Pokemon.
damage like
Yeah, we
everybody's.
can take more damage. Oh my gosh. It's true though.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I can't
Yeah.
wait to share that with my teenagers.
That's funny. So
Um,
let me ask
yeah,
you this, like what's coming for Tracie for you as a coach? Any programs or
yeah.
anything that you want to share with us or anything that, anybody listening to also maybe you want to learn from Tracie, like anything that's coming up for you.
Awesome. Well, I always have a ton of things happening because part of what I do is I have a community.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the Gather community. And it started when COVID started
Hmm.
because I actually had opened an in-person event space 5 months before COVID began. And
Yes.
of course, we had to close down and
Mhm.
we had to wait and see what was going to happen. But in the
Yeah.
meantime, I said, well, how can I support everyone who's having such a challenge to move things online, to
Yeah.
connect to people, even though they can't leave their house? And so I created the Gather community based on the model of having a room and giving people promotion and
Yeah.
visibility. We do that now all online with our members and our audience, which
Yeah.
is amazing because then we closed down the lease for the space and I
Hmm.
don't have that anymore. And the goal is to have this online community grow and be able to reach more and more women entrepreneurs out there in the world, to connect them, to help them know that they're not alone, that they get to meet other people and get inspired and get ideas and learn and grow together. So that's one big thing that I do, that I'm always looking to bring new people in to come check us out. We do lots of stuff that's free. We've got a Facebook group, all that stuff. So no payment required to come and find out what's going on with that.
Nice. That sounds
There is
really
a
cool.
paid membership and stuff too, but it's the other thing.
Yeah.
And then from a coaching standpoint, because that was such a big deal for the last 4 years,
Hmm.
the coaching stuff was really a challenge for me to figure out what I wanted to do, because I was spending so much time looking at the Gather community and
Yeah. You're
developing that.
gathering people. Come on.
I was exactly. So my coaching really changed. And what it changed to really was just in the last year. And I
Hmm.
realized that if the Gather community is this online, nationwide, global, even
Heck yeah.
community,
Hmm.
I'm always excited about, like, hey, so and so from Canada, thanks for making us international today.
Right.
But what I realized was, because that's all online, I didn't have I promised all of them that I wouldn't go back to in
Hmm.
person,
Hmm.
because what about like the people in Texas? Like, they can't come in person with me on a regular basis. So the
Hmm.
online community stays. And now I'm going to do retreats and
Ooh.
make it be a really,
Yeah.
short term, immersive and powerful
Yeah.
experience for a group. It's not something that everyone in the community has to feel like they're missing out on, because
Hmm.
it's not like an everyone thing. It's like, it's just a retreat. It's a weekend,
Yeah.
a
Oh, and those are
special
powerful.
occasion. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really excited about that. I have my first one coming up in September. I'm planning 2 for next year.
Yay.
Very thrilled about that.
Cool. Well, I'll be sharing any links that need to be shared in the show
Awesome.
notes as well. So let me ask you this. I don't know if I told you that I would be asking this question, but
That's okay.
what's something that you would share with like a student or someone that wants to learn from you that was like a something important that you learned along your process?
Yeah, well, we kind of already touched on it.
Mm-hmm.
Really, whenever I'm asked this question, it always goes back to everything is a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to sit with that for a second to realize what it means. But the idea is that, so to use an example, when my kids were little, you're not there yet, but when my kids were in, say, first and third grade, or
Mm-hmm.
kindergarten and third grade, they went to school every day. They needed lunches,
Yeah.
right? And yes, and I was health coach before that, right? So yes, I could have just told them to go to school lunch. But
Mm-hmm.
as a mom of young kids, I really wanted them to have good, healthy food to take with
Mm-hmm.
them to school, because I didn't,
Yeah.
I didn't want them to not have that. It was
Yeah.
really important to me. But I was always complaining about it. Oh,
Mm.
make lunches, gotta do lunches. And then when
Uh.
when it was holidays, it's like, thank God, no lunches for a whole week, or
Yeah.
whatever. So lunches was always a thing. And when the whole idea of everything is a choice got to me, I started applying it to that.
Mm-hmm.
It's my choice to make the lunches every day. It's
Yeah.
like, well, you might argue, Tracie, no, it's not. I need to, my kids need to eat. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, yeah, but do you need to make them lunch, or do they even need to eat that one meal? Like, are they going to die if they
Mm-hmm.
don't?
Yeah.
Yes, it's best for them. Yes, they need nutrition to be able to thrive at school and have
Mm-hmm.
energy and learn and grow their brains. Yes, these are all important things,
Yes.
but you could choose not to.
Yeah.
And, when I realized that that wasn't an option, I realized that I had made that choice.
Yeah.
Also, it happened later when my youngest wanted to go to gymnastics, and
Yeah.
every day, like 2:30, when it was time to drive her to gymnastics, I was just like, it's taking up my work day. I don't
Yeah.
have time for this. I'd get really frustrated when I
Yeah.
realized that what I was frustrated about was me not using my morning time well.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
now blaming my kid for
Mm-hmm.
taking me away from this afternoon time that supposedly was the valuable time.
Yeah. I
So
think that's so important. Yes.
it's huge. The
Yeah.
choice that I made to realize that this was what I was like, this is the whole point of working for
Mm-hmm.
myself, is so I can do this. This
Yeah.
is the choice I'm making.
For sure.
So it was huge. And for all of us to be able to wrap our decisions up in remembering that these are things we're choosing to do. No
Yeah.
one's forcing us. No one's got a gun to your head.
Yeah. And I think
Things that are important.
that's something I remind my clients too, is like, it's a choice. Like what you just said was like, oh, I gotta make my kids some lunch, gotta take my kids to gymnastics. Also, I think the feeling of choosing to sit in with that feeling, that's also a choice. Like, I choose to complain, which then leads
Totally.
to the next thing, which then
Yes.
leads to the next thing. So remember, whatever choice you make your kids some lunch, don't make your kids some lunch, but also how you choose to feel about it.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
also a choice, which you may be like, but
Totally.
that person made me feel, or that
Nope.
circumstance. Yes, I think it's okay to allow the emotions to come in, but how we choose to continue with whatever those
Respond.
emotions are, yeah, how
Yep.
we respond, exactly. I think that's important. So
Yep.
everything is a choice, yo. And the one thing I did want to ask you, if somebody does want to go to your retreats or work with you, where can we
Yeah.
find you online?
So really everything can be found at tracieroot.com. There's
Perfect.
links in the bottom that'll link you over to the Gather
Yes.
community. There you can find things about my free workshops that I do every month,
Mm.
my clarity sessions that I have, coaching opportunities on tracieroot.com. And of course, if you go over to the Gather community, you'll find things that I'm hosting, that our members are hosting, that are
Yay.
happening for business connects or co-working or networking, and lots of workshops and stuff like that.
Cool. So as she said, I'm going to put all the links in the show notes. And if you have any questions for Tracie, send her a message. I'm sure she accepts those. So thank you so much, Tracie, for sharing your journey, your insights, the fact that, remember, everything is a choice. I really, really appreciate you being on. And it's honestly an honor and such a good reminder for me too, because there's been some choices that I've been making in my head.
Good for you. Well, and you know what, Carla, I would say, don't forget that it's all a season
Yes.
also, right? Like, the choices might be difficult now, and that's okay, because soon it's gonna feel different
Yeah.
already, and it moves fast. So
Thank you
you're
so
doing
much.
great. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I love being with you
Yay.
today. Thank you so much.